and then the unicorns do come. I mean, the Pegasus do come. And I'm like, that's what he's talking about. It's Peter Pegasus. And again, one of the more iconic characters to come out of this movie from 1940.
I never knew it. I watched that segment, and like you, I thought My Little Pony with the unicorns flying, with the unicorns running around. But again, the music tied into the movement, and I maybe it just hit me that it was black and white, and then of course the child is also black and white. I thought it was a great meld of visual.
Yeah, I thought the whole thing was. And even when that scene ends, the cherub is playing the little flute, and they see the waterfall, and then they kind of follow that river through some trees, and then we're back into a lagoon, and this is where we get the scene with the centaurs. Mm-hmm. And at first it's all female centaurs who are swimming around. This is where we mentioned before that their toplesses would never fly in 2019. But they are. And this scene leads into a bunch of you see other characters where it's more of that mermaid look you were talking about. They just have like a bikini top on, and then they're half human and half another animal. Centaurs are not part fish, but you could tell that this is the beginnings of what some 40, 30 years later, 50 years later would become Little Mermaid. Yeah,
and it's amazing. Absolutely fantastic the way that was done.
Yeah, it was. Now this follows through a few scenes where we then get like a Roman king, right? Or would that be a Greek king? Well, I forget. I guess it would be a Greek king.
Greek, I think. Yeah.
And then you get the Greek gods throwing lightning bolts at him, and then that donkey is with him. And that donkey, if you paid attention, clearly what Pinocchio turns into. They clearly modeled Pinocchio and his buddy that turned into donkeys in Pinocchio off of this donkey's image. They look very similar. They have the same kind of facial features. So there's another time where they looked back into Walt Disney's history and said, oh, there's a donkey. Let's kind of model it towards it. I mean, it wasn't an exact copy, but you could see how this morphed into Pinocchio and I can't remember his buddy's name right now, but
I didn't even think about that. It's yet another thing I'm learning. I feel like I'm at school at a desk.
All right, so you're taking notes. There'll be a pop quiz later.
Thank you. But I never thought of it. And it's got to be, after this movie is made, you got to think that these images were stock images that they have placed aside for later use in different movies. They just jazzed it up, for lack of a better phrase, to put into these movies. But there's got to be, they've had to use these images as stock images.
You would assume it saves time, right, if you have a thing to go off of. Plus, there's a great story that Walt would actually bring animals in for the animators to learn how to draw them. So once you've done that, let's say brought in a donkey and had it drawn for Fantasia, why wouldn't you just keep using whatever they came up with as their original piece instead of bringing in donkeys every time you need a new donkey for another cartoon?
Right. And it's the same animators throughout the years, I would imagine. They don't change. So the style is there.
There was the old man's group or something like that. Well, I don't know. There was a group of animators who were with Disney from the very first movie, Snow White, all the way until the last one, because they left. Period. One would leave and then another one would leave, but the last one left like in the 80s, I believe. I mean, they lasted that long at the Walt Disney Company. Wow. And they were obviously controlling a lot of the projects in the later years because they were there for so long. So, I assume they would go back to what they know, wouldn't you? Plus, again, now it might be a little quicker to do an animated movie than a live-action movie, maybe. I'm not really sure the process today. Back then, it was surely longer to do an animated movie.
Right. It's like we went back to before. We'll go back to before. It's so time-consuming and so intricate. You almost as if you're comparing a quill to a keyboard, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah, and you're talking about a time when even the animation of, say, the 90s, which was still hand-drawn, but it was fed then into better equipment.
Yes.
back then they had this plane camera thing that would basically take a photo and then you'd move it a little and take another photo and then move it a little and then take a little. So every shot had to be set up. You know, when you do a live action film, they set up a shot. Me and you have a little dialogue. We move a little bit. We do something. And then they stop to set up another shot. But in animation, it's get the shot. Now let's set it up again.
Yeah, stop motion, stop animation, something like that.
Stop animation, yeah. And Disney invented the thing that he filmed all this on. You know, the apparatus itself, you can actually see in Disney World and Disneyland. I believe it's in Disneyland. I know it's in Disney World. But so that's, you know, it was just very time consuming. So, of course, they would go back to things they've already known work that look good and model things off of other items that they've already done.
Right.
Now, this leads after the king. He's getting lightning bolts thrown at him from Zeus, I assume. Or maybe Zeus is the one making it and giving it to... no. Which is the god of lightning?
Isn't it Zeus?
It is.
Yeah,
so
Zeus. Yeah.
So maybe Zeus is throwing it, or maybe he's the one making it. I don't know. But one guy's making these lightning bolt sword javelin thingies, and the other one's throwing it at him. Then he's chasing him, and you see, like, it looks like two fists, but the god's face is on it, chasing him around. Really well done. So we're still in the pastoral, but it's this whole... It changed very drastically. Because first we had this cute little, you know, unicorns and Pegasus, and then the centaurs showed up. And centaurs, throughout mythological history, have been a little more edgy. They've been usually the bad guys, or ironically, they're either the bad guys or they're the ones who bring the knowledge to people to get past the bad guys. They don't, you know, one or the other, but they're more of a quest-related type thing, not just for fun like we had in the beginning. And now we've gotten to the point where the king, who was, you know, he had the grapes on his ear and he was living the life. He was a big, fat, jolly guy, and now they're, you know, I guess he was treating the donkey a little wrong or something like that. Was that the
I think
catalyst?
So, yeah.
And the gods are now mad at him for doing this, so they're going to punish him by chasing him all over the world.
Yeah.
So,
you know, what am I going to say? You might as well just record my voice and say, very well done, because that's pretty much how this is going to pan out. Because, I mean, it's symphony. It's flows in the animation. And the fact is, and another reason why I should have left this for closing remarks, but there's no vocals in any of this, with the exception of Mickey when he tugs on the coat of the conductor. And there's a lot to say for other senses when you watch or when you listen to something that strikes the brain patterns, that sparks the brain to imagine, to think, and to comprehend what is going on. This is a great example of you don't need just words.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I like all the talking scenes, like you said, take place from the conductor, and that's it. Yeah. He explains some scenes in a short way. The pastoral version, he actually explains a lot of the colors being nighttime than daytime, and how light takes over darkness. And, you know, there's this great moral battle going on within this scene, you know, that kind of just plays in the background, where you can just be awed by the visuals if you don't want to get more meta with it, you know, like you don't have to. Right. It's great as a standalone, but behind it is all this, you know, color schemes going on with nighttime and daytime and how they battle for position in Earth. And I find that fascinating. And then we get to the end of that whole scene, and it's nighttime when he's being attacked, you know, and then daytime's going to fight again.
And, you know, it kind of brings me back, and I hate to mention another fandom, but I was at a certain convention 2 weeks ago, and they had a session where they examined just one episode, and they took that, and this professor broke it down to shapes, camera angles, verbiage, nonverbal cues, and broke this episode down into that minute of a subject, and totally turned me on to this episode. And it's amazing what they've done in this movie particular, in Fantasia in 1940, to actually trip into sensory overload.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it's actually even this scene, the pastoral scene, is very good for that. But even more so is the last scene of the movie, which we have two songs: a Russian and a I can't think of it. It's a Russian thing, and then Ave Maria. So the Russian ballet and Ave Maria do not at all sound like they belong together. They absolutely clash, and they clash in such a way that it's actually perfect. They're one right after the other, if that makes sense to the listener. And so you have a night on Bald Mountain, and Bald Mountain is where the devil comes to show himself. That's he tells you this right in the movie, so you don't need to know this going in, but the legend is that's where the devil shows himself, so his followers dance awaiting his arrival till the sun comes up, again, the sun, night and sun thing, and runs them out of town. Now, when he says it, he doesn't say runs them out of town, but he says something like scurry back underneath or something like that. When you hear that, you kind of assume at the end of this scene they're going to fly away and disappear, run for cover like, cockroaches in a wet basement when you turn the lights on. But that's not what happens here. First, it's one of the more powerful scenes of the movie because you actually see the devil show himself, wings out, his arms up. He's cut up. He's really like he's been pumping iron, and then he has the fire and the flames, and these are all iconic scenes in Disney lore that we have with all this going on. And his arms, these huge, long arms, he can reach over the mountain and grab anything he wants. And you see like skeletons and ghouls and ghosts kind of floating up to him or dancing to him. And he even holds some of them in his hand, in the palm of his hand, almost to say, I hold the souls of humans in my hand as fire rages around them. You see others jumping into the fire to get close to him, Now, that's just my interpretation, but that's what I feel like they're doing. They're trying to get close to the devil. When the scene comes to an end, we have what ends up being interesting to me is the fire rages up, right? It starts to die down because daylight's coming. They instead of running away, they all very slowly and sadly drift down, almost as if they're depressed the night is ending. Yes. Into a sea of fire.
Yes.
He wraps his wings out one last time, gives the big 2 hands over his head look, brings his arms down, the wings close up, and now he is the top of the mountain. He doesn't come to the mountain to see them, but he is the mountain that comes alive at night. So what'd you think of that, other than it's well done?
Yeah, it's a well done scene, and you think Ave Maria, you think of all the churches.
Well, that's the next scene.
Yeah, the next scene. And you think, and that's just crazy. I mean, when the devil becomes the mountain, it throws you for a loop almost. But the build up was the best part of that scene on how it came to be. And the devil, like you said, looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger out of Terminator back in 1980, he's spreading the wings out, and to the viewer that could mean the power and the rage, and I'm ready to conquer. But he becomes the mountain to say, I've been here the whole time.
Right, exactly. And that's, the other ones were nice ballets and they were cute little stories, but I feel like this one, the Mickey one served a moral purpose. Don't try and get out of doing your chores. It's only going to backfire because he falls asleep in the seat and then he's covered in water. But this one serves an even larger moral lesson because it is, you thought I was gone? I'm not gone. I'm always here. You just don't see me.
Right.
And then the sun comes up, and then we have Ave Maria. So like you said, you believe,
Yes.
This is all you can think of is churches at this point. And then you have all the scenes with the sun, but this is the he might be here all the time. And that's all fine and dandy because as long as the light is in your life, knowledge or whatever, the belief of Jesus or whatever. I don't think they were going for necessarily a religious overtone there, but whatever you believe that